countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, it is now time for the last comic shop.
So is that actually the open?
I don't know, I wanted to do something different.
Yikes.
It gets boring saying the same thing over and over again. Why do you think I'd start doing that live from, Stan's barber shop?
Yeah, I guess we're opening the shop up.
Yeah, for the
newbies
people we didn't scare away.
People who are turning around and leaving.
Right.
You guys are harsh. Why can't I have some fun? You guys get like days off.
That's not a day off. That's striking. That's different.
Well, the host with the most, Andy Larson, he wants to have some fun and not get cut down so much by his loyal co-hosts, Chad Smith and J.A. Scott. Come on, guys. It's tough filling these shoes because, I have to wade through a lot of stuff on the show. But one thing that we're not wading through today is these fantastic interviews. As you may or may not know, a couple weeks ago, we went to Baltimore Comic Con, Chad and I, and we interviewed a ton of people. It was crazy. Chad, I think we started off.
Yeah, I think as of Friday, we had 2. And we had a lot of people telling us, check back on Sunday. We're like, yeah. That's just the polite way of them giving us the brush. But it turns out, by the time we checked back on Sunday, we had quite a few.
Yeah, 19 in total. So, yeah, we got the first 4 done in a show a couple weeks ago. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back to the archives. Check out I think it's the November 8th episode of The Last Comic Shop for great interviews from Russ Braun and Mark Morales and Gene Luen Yang and Fred Van Lente and Ryan Dunleavy. And on today's program, we're going to have even more interviews for you. Some wonderful talents such as the absolutely wonderful and gracious Louise Simonson. So happy to talk with her. That was a wonderful, wonderful interview. As well as Ted Sikora, who's actually from our backyard over there in Cleveland, Ohio. I wonder if he read the Harvey P. Carr book. And he's from Hero Tomorrow Comics, and he's got, I talked to him about Apama. And finally, we've got Riley Brown, our one show that we did all about Batman Fortnite 0 Point. He did the art for that. So all of those things coming up later in the show. But first, before we get to pleasure, it's time to get done with business. And our business is always recapping weekly polls, or at least it's JA's business. He's the one that's nice enough to go out to Last Comic Shop every Thursday and post a weekly poll that all of our fans can vote on. And we feel it's our obligation to come back on this show sometimes and actually recap them. So, Jay, it's a short poll recap this week with only 4 polls we're going to be looking at.
That is correct. 4 polls. Though we are going to kick off looking at the previous poll recap because the last poll from the previous recap and the first poll from this recap are linked.
Oh, all right. So let's rewind to previous poll recap.
So, back in time. The last poll was Best Marvel Monster. And you had your choices Werewolf by Night, Morbius, Fin Fang Foom, or Man Thing. Man Thing won it. The first poll in this recap is Best DC Monster.
Oh, okay. No, I like how you're doing this. So what were the choices for Best DC Monster?
Solomon Grundy, Man Bat, Swamp Thing, or Frankenstein Agent Shade.
All right. I do remember some folks giving us a little bit of shade themselves by not including Etrigan the Demon. Look, there's only 4 slots.
And that rhyming is just annoying. Scram, demon.
Get lost. Here's some holy water. Who won this poll, J.A.?
It was Swamp Thing by a landslide. So Swamp Thing and Man Thing will have to go up against each other at some point. We'll just have a mano-y-mano poll.
The battle of the biggest things.
Yeah, maybe Ben Grimm has to interject. But no, I feel like the Heap should be the special guest referee in that. Because he was the grandpappy of all those muck monsters. Chad, who did you vote for? I did not vote for Swamp Thing.
I believe I was blinded by the excitement of recently picking up the action figure of one Solomon Grundy born on a Monday. So that's what I went with.
Yeah, no, that was my pick too. Great minds think alike on this one, and I just love the fact that he was a member of the Legion of Doom. He's the first one that I think of out of that 4. Although there's an awesome episode of Batman the Animated Series with Man-Bat. It was one of the first episodes I ever saw of that animated series, and I loved it. Jay, who'd you vote for?
I went with Swamp Thing.
You can't go wrong with Swamp Thing. There's lots of great Swamp Thing stories out there. I feel like he's like DC's Daredevil, where they just let good creative teams run wild on Swamp Thing. And so every now and again you get magic there.
Yeah, and he has had a pretty historic career. I mean, even as far back as before the Alan Moore stuff, like you have the Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson, and Bernie Wrightson's Swamp Thing is gorgeous to look at if you've never had an opportunity to read some of that.
And Sneaky Peeky Trivia for today's show, what comic celeb we'll be interviewing today appeared on the cover of the first appearance of Swamp Thing?
Oh, yes! Think about it, folks. And think about this. What was our next poll, J.A.?
Favorite JSA member. Who's your favorite member of the Justice Society of America?
Oh, this was the lead up to Black Adam. And,
yes.
This was actually a really hard poll for me because I think there's 2 folks on this list that I actually have previously said that I love.
Yes, you said you liked Dr. Fate, and you also liked Hawkman.
Okay. Who else rounded out that 4?
Green Lantern or Power Girl?
Oh, Boob Window. I thought she was going to get more votes. She did not. She did not, surprisingly. And I did find out in an interview with Jerry Ordway at Baltimore Comic-Con that he loves to draw Alan Scott, although he thinks his outfit it's not really good for his weakness. Like, his weakness is wood, and, like, he has one of those high collars, so somebody just can come up behind him with a baseball bat and ruin his day. Any case, who won this?
Dr. Fate saw it coming and took home the prize.
Okay. Is that who you voted for, Chad?
Oh, yeah. That has to be one of the coolest costumes in all of comics. With the shiny, like, gold chromed out, like, oh, it's just fantastic.
I think it's the one time that, like, DC does it better than Marvel. Like, I prefer the look of Dr. Fate over Doctor Strange any day. Like, I never honestly liked Doctor Strange's look. I actually prefer him when he wore that mask for, like, a hot second.
Really? I think Doctor Strange fits what he does, but it's just not as cool looking as Dr. Fate.
Who did you vote for, J.A.?
I went with Dr. Fate.
Okay.
Is there a Dr. Fate action figure with the, like, vac metalized helmet?
I don't think the Superpowers one had the vac metal, and there have been Dr. Fate action figures, but not many with the shiny chrome, chromed out gold. It's a missed opportunity.
It is. It is a missed opportunity. So if you're listening, toy makers, I'm sure Chad would buy it. Not to say that he wouldn't buy an action figure anyways, but if you really want to convince him, give you his hard-earned dollars, make a vac metal Dr. Fate figure. I was surprised Hawkman. That's who I voted for, believe it or not. I like Dr. Fate, but I still voted for Hawkman. And I do agree that could have made him look real stupid in that movie, but he ended up looking pretty cool. It was one of the high points of Black Adam. So what was the next poll, J.A.?
While we're talking about random guys, random DC hero movie. Who has not starred in a movie would you like to see in a movie? So, is it Martian Manhunter? Is it Plastic Man? Is it Nightwing? Or everyone's favorite, Booster Gold?
Yes. This was kind of a little bit of a backhanded compliment towards Black Adam, wasn't it?
It's acknowledging that if they can make a Black Adam movie, they should be able to make one of these movies, because Hollywood's just throwing stupid money after comic book characters at the moment.
All you need is a megastar that says, I look like that person. Make a movie out of that.
So that begs the question then, who would be Nightwing? That's the winner of the poll with 39%. Who is looking like Nightwing? Who's the star that's going to helm that ship?
Oh, boy. Gosh. Who do you think, Chad? Who looks like Nightwing?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not much of a casting agent, I'll be honest.
Zac Efron?
Very handsome, Zac Efron is. Yeah, you need a young up-and-comer with a big, juicy butt. What the ladies are looking for out of a Nightwing movie.
I am really upset that we never got a Joseph Gordon-Levitt Nightwing, because they teased it at the end of Dark Knight Rises. He finds the Batcave, Christian Bale, Batman leaves him all his stuff, and
his name was Robin all along.
He would have been a great Nightwing or / Robin or somebody, but they never followed through with that.
He was never better than when he was in Third Rock from the Sun. That's all I'm going to say.
Wow. He's a great actor, and I love a ton of his movies. I think back to 500 Days of Summer. But anyway, all these guys have passed now. You need somebody with that youthful, late 20s, early 30s.
Well, they got to be young, because you're going to put together a 3 to 5 movie run. So, they've got to be able to play the same character for at least 10 years.
Has anybody watched the HBO show?
No.
Titans? Yeah, me either.
I'm not down with that show for some reason. It just never struck my imagination. But one thing that did strike my imagination is our fourth and final poll. So, J.A., what's that?
Oh, this one was squarely aimed at Chad. So, favorite new mutant, not named Magic, because obviously she's the best. So, is it Cannonball? Is it Warlock? Is it Danny Moonstar? Or is it Cable? I threw that in for the Rob Liefeld.
And Cable he wasn't even in the top 2, because there was only a top 2, right? This was a 2-horse race that there was never a clear winner, right?
That is correct. Cannonball and Danny Moonstar took it home. They shared top honors with 33% of the vote. Warlock, I thought, would have gotten more love. No love for the Technovirus.
Self-friend Warlock didn't make it that far, but Danny and Sam, they both led the New Mutants. They've shared that role. Why not share win in the poll?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I won't lie. I have been converted over that there's nothing better than just walking up to somebody and say, you know what? I'm invulnerable when blasting.
Honestly, you got to do it with a southern accent and everything. That's all part of the Sam Guthrie charm. He's invulnerable.
He's invulnerable.
I remember up, though, and being like, who's this Cannonball guy? And I thought he was a second-tier player in that whole New Mutants universe, because they put Cable out front and center, right? When Rob took over the book, it was all his guys. They put them all front and center. And Cannonball, who had been around for years, was in the background, I'm the cool guy that flies. Question mark.
Listen, Rob Liefeld gave him his due. He made him an external. As a reader in the 90s, there was that issue right after Executioner's Song where Cannonball stands up to Professor Xavier, and he's talking about, the fist. X-Force, how they're supposed to be more aggressive, and the fist could also be used to protect, and he opened his hand and there's a little tiny mouse in there. It was awesome. Won my respect, and Professor Xavier's as well.
I'm just amazed that we didn't have any chirping from the peanut gallery on where's Boom Boom? I need my Boom Boom.
I do like Boom Boom, but she's not in the top 4. Come on. She's like Sunspot. Sunspot belongs on a New Mutants team, but I'm never going to vote for him as one of my favorite.
Man, but Sunspot looks so cool.
Kirby Crackle.
That was another great interview that we had at Baltimore Comic-Con with Bob McLeod, and he said that the worst thing about drawing Sunspot was all the Kirby Crackle. It took him forever to draw the little dots around, in the aura, and I was just yeah, that would piss me off. If I had to try.
But you can get away
totally worth it.
Yeah, but you can also get away with not having to worry about defining any of his muscles, because the entire center of his body is black.
He's just sleek. It's like Black Suit Spider-Man. I think some muscles would be beneficial. I mean, it worked for Venom in that costume. He had nothing but muscles. So, any case, yeah, I've been talking a lot about the interviews during these poll recaps, and I think it's about time that we got to some of them. So right after these commercial breaks, we'll be right back with the first of our wonderful interviews for today with Louise Simonson. But make sure that you vote in some of our wonderful polls every single week by going out to Last Comic Shop out on Twitter every Thursday. Coming up next, some interviews.
Hey everybody, I'm Amber.
And I'm Maddie.
And we're Witches Talking Tarot. And this season we've got for you ghosts, cryptids, conspiracies. Oh my.
Check out what role we cast Emma Robertson on our myth episodes this season.
Yes. And in addition to our myths, we will be bringing you the holidays because we may or may not have missed one this last season. I guess you'll have to listen to the last episodes to check it out, and then catch all our new episodes coming up every Tuesday and Thursday on your favorite podcast platforms, and see us on YouTube.
Come and sit with us for a spell.
Hi, I'm Kevin DeCristofano.
And I'm Sean Flanagan.
And we are the Ninja Turtle Nerds, your weekly podcast covering the Ninja Turtle comic book series one issue at a time. Plus the video games, the cartoon show, the VHS tapes. If it's Ninja Turtles, we'll cover it. Ninja Turtle Nerds is available wherever you get your podcasts.
We're here at Baltimore Comic Con with the wonderful Louise Simonson. Thank you so much for taking just a few moments to talk to not only Chad and I, but also all the Last Comic Shop fans that have just found your work recently or been fans for many, many years. I mean, you've written so many good things over the years and been involved with so much wonderful stuff. So the question I wanted to ask you, though, is do you remember the first comic book you ever read?
Oh, gosh. The first comic book I ever read might have been a Lone Ranger comic.
Okay.
I'm very, 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 very old. And there were no comic shops that I knew of, because I was just a little kid at that point.
Right.
And there was was it Walgreens? Maybe it was a Walgreens. And they had a spinner rack. And when my mom would go shopping, I would gravitate toward where the comics were, and I would read the comics off the spinner rack. They didn't have superhero comics. Oh, actually, they had the occasional Superman.
Right.
I found Lois Lane very annoying because she kept trying to prove that Clark Kent was Superman, and really, I wanted her to get out there and get some reporting done. This is again a 50s Superman story. So a guy's idea about what a 50s Lois might do.
Right.
So I was very perturbed at Lois. So I think I'd read Lone Ranger first.
Okay, so you kind of came in a little bit after, like, all the EC comics and, like, kind of like the Seduction of the Innocent and all that.
I did not see an EC comic until I think Seduction of the Innocent had happened.
Right.
And anything that wasn't a clean comic.
That's why I was asking, because you said that it was like a couple, like the Lois Lanes and the.
Yeah, it was Brothers of the Spear and Silver. The horse had his own comic book.
He's a very interesting horse.
He was an interesting horse. The first horror comic I saw, the first EC, I was like 12 or 13.
Okay.
The comics were in a box under one of my friend's beds. They had belonged to her brother.
Okay.
And she pulled them out, and I remember reading a Wally Wood story. I don't remember the name of it now, but it was the one where you have these two old guys having dinner.
Okay.
And of course there were craters all drawn all over everything. My little mind was blown. And then by the end of it, one of them was gone.
Yes.
And they didn't remember because the aliens had come and carried him off.
Oh, yes.
And it blew my little kid mind. I mean,
right.
I was not a sophisticated child. And it was like, whoa, something like that could actually happen. That is the coolest. And I've been looking for aliens ever since. And I've never seen one.
That EC Comics twist at the end. It was just like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yep, I loved it very much.
Bill
like
Gaines
that.
insisted upon that twist in every single issue.
Loved it.
So I'm curious, how do you go from picking up those comics at Walgreens to...
Oh, I didn't pick them up. I read them for free. I had...
putting them back on the rack.
My allowance was 5 cents. You could get a comic for 5 cents, or you could get a double scoop ice cream cone for 5 cents. I went to the library, and my mom took me to the library every week. I read as many books as the library would let me take out every week. And my sisters, I had 3 sisters, we all would get 10, I think was the maximum. Each of us would get out 10 books. I mean, I was the oldest, so I would get the older ones.
Right.
But my little sisters were very smart. So they could read my books, and of course I could read theirs.
Right.
So we had 40 books to read, and then the next week my mom would take us to the library again.
Okay.
So I didn't pay for my comic books.
There you go.
I paid for the ice cream. Anyway, but aside from that, what was you actually had a legitimate question. What was it?
I was going to ask, because is it true you were the inspiration for, was it House of Mystery? 87, the cover art. How do you go from that little girl to House of Mystery?
You live in the right apartment building.
But what inspired you to get into the comic book industry as a professional?
Well, when I came to New York, I wanted to get into publishing. And I didn't know quite how to go about it. Back in the olden days, before you were born, when you wanted to get a job, you would go to an agency. They would have a list of job openings, and you would apply. They would send you places.
Right.
They sent me to several places. One of which was a clothing company, where they thought I would be good at modeling, like size 8 pants or something, size 6 pants. I don't remember. I was skinny then, and I got offered the job, and I thought, I just had visions of these old guys like pinching my bottom.
Oh, jeez.
Right. Oh, look at those cute. Let's just look at. No, I said no. Then I got sent to a publishing company, a magazine publisher. I was sent to the distribution department.
Okay.
And it was publishing, so I was in. So I said, okay, I'm taking that job. And I was doing that work. Then they moved me over eventually to advertising promotion, where I wrote stuff, and I did paste ups and mechanicals and stuff like that.
Okay.
Michelle Brand, who was eventually Bernie Wrightson's wife, worked at Warren Publishing.
Okay.
And she was my friend, because I knew people in the comics industry in my area. And she said, there's a job opening at my company, and it pays better than your job.
Oh,
nice.
And I said, okay, I'll apply. And I went over and applied, and I got the job. It was in their production department.
Okay.
Turned out I was terrible at production. I was not good at it anyway. Maybe I wasn't terrible. Okay, awful. Maybe not terrible. And
Probably being too hard on yourself.
Right, exactly. But I was a pair of hands, and I could do a lot of different kinds of things, some of them better than others. And they said, we need somebody to write advertising copy, because Warren had Captain Company with the ads for monster masks and things. And I'd say I can do that. Letters, pages, I can do that. This and that. Eventually, after 2 months, they finally got me out of production. I'm sure they were glad, they created an assistant editor position for me.
That's awesome.
And once I started working in comics, I didn't want to do anything else.
Yes.
That's fantastic. And your career has been varied and just incredibly successful. One of the things, we've met a number of the creators of the Superman books, and you were a creator around the time of the death of Superman.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what it was like to be in that office and to be part of creating those stories? We heard that it wasn't really a well thought out plan, that it was...
Well, it wasn't. As I remember it, and honestly, when you talk to different people, you will get, it's like Rashomon. You're going to get different versions of the same thing. Dan Jurgensen we were doing an interview with Dan, and Dan had a completely different.
It's kind of like a stew. That's actually why we're excited, because we've talked to Brett Breeding, we've talked to a lot of different folks that have had these stories about how it happened. So what are your ingredients to the plot?
My ingredients to the plot are, and you may take this with a grain of salt that they deserve, because it was a long time ago and everybody else some people remember things differently. We had spent some time creating the scenario for a year's worth of material on Superman. Every year we would have a giant Superman meeting, in which the writers, the artists, the colorists, the letterers, the editors, we would have this giant meeting, and we'd all sit around a table and bring our ideas.
Yeah, but you were doing those triangle books where everybody was sharing storylines.
That's exactly
cohesion.
Right. Sort of weave together a general movement of stories throughout a year's worth of 4 and then 5 books. And then, as I remember it, Jeanette Kahn came down and said, oh, you can't do that because we have a TV show coming up.
Yes.
Lois and Clark. You've heard this version.
I've heard parts.
Okay.
But I want to hear yours.
All right. Well, it's nice to know that somebody at least has the same memory of it I do. Our scenario involved Lois and Clark getting engaged and getting married.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got a year's worth of materials. I remember it as 2 days worth of doing work and writing things on boards and, arguing about storylines and stuff. And Jeanette says, you can't do it.
Oh.
And we said, oh, bad word. And then, that's because I don't know who's listening to this. And then we had another day, I think, as I'm remembering it, but who knows, to get a completely different year's worth of material done.
Wow.
So Jerry, as always, said, what are we going to do? We could do this, we could do that. Jerry says, let's kill him. And we, as he did every year. And we said, yeah, let's kill him. We had different reasons why we thought this was a good idea.
Okay.
I mean, my reason was that I wanted the world to see what it was like without Superman.
Yes.
Because we got a lot of, even though the books were doing, pretty well for DC books, even without the death, we would hear things like, oh, Superman's so old and we always know what's going to happen. He's been around so long, he's boring. We want,
This
death
is the
and
early
destruction.
90s, people wanted extreme.
Right,
and
exactly.
That was the style.
And I like calling people on things like that. So that was my idea, why I thought it was a good idea.
Right.
Other people had different reasons for it. I think some people thought that it would be fun to just do how he died, and I thought it was more fun to do the world without Superman.
Right. I agree that it's almost like a trilogy of series, right? You've got the death of Superman, and then you got Funeral of a Friend.
Right, exactly.
Which is sometimes the one that's overlooked, but I think it's the more interesting of the chapters because it is the world without Superman.
Right. And then you've got the four Superman, those guys.
But how it allowed everybody to personalize it. Like, what does Superman mean to you? And,
right.
And so did that happen with you? Did you, retrospectively look back at yourself and go, what does Superman mean to me as a person, or a world without somebody like that?
I never wanted to have a world without Superman. For me, I didn't have to look back and think, well, what would it be like, or anything like that. I thought it would be a bad idea to have a world without Superman. I wish I could use some Superman in this fixing things going on right now.
Obviously, we all could.
But I did want to show a world without Superman and what he had meant to people. And that seemed to, the death of Superman was a big deal.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it was a bigger deal
cultural moment.
Yeah, it was a bigger deal than any of us had thought that I think that it would be. Because I've killed characters before. I ripped off their wings and done terrible, monstrous, horrible things to them. And people think it's kind of cool sometimes, and sometimes they don't even notice.
Right.
But I still hear about an X-Men. Poor dead Doug. I hear about Doug 45 years later. I'm still hearing about Doug.
The X Office. You had such a hand in the X Office when I was becoming a reader. And so I was wondering if you had any fun stories about working with Anna Senti or Chris Claremont, or
I'm sure
with your husband on X Factor. Does anything stand out from your X Office days?
The whole thing does. I mean, honestly, working with Anne, Anne says that I taught her everything that she knows about working, I don't know, an X-Men or something, or comics or Marvel or whatever. She didn't need me to teach her anything. She was such a good instinct for that stuff. She just knew. So sometimes you are handed assistants, because mostly you don't get the chance to hire them yourself.
Right.
You're handed assistants, and sometimes you really click with them, and sometimes you don't. I mean, I had some really great assistants. Danny Fingeroth was really fun to work with.
Okay.
And Annie was great. And Annie was also, but when she came in as my assistant, I had been thinking of going freelance. I had written Power Pack.
Right.
And then I think I was offered X Factor after. I offered some other stuff, and then X Factor as a regular gig.
Right.
And I found that writing things and editing was too easy. It had gotten a little boring for me.
You were too good at it.
And it was partly because I had such great teams on everything.
Yeah.
I didn't have to, help them, nudge them. Occasionally somebody would need a little help or nudge on some direction, but it was not the least bit onerous. I was told by one of our finance guys who were supposed to, they did one of these studies where they count, how many pages everybody does and how long it takes them and whether you show up on time, and I don't know what it was, some stupid thing. And they told me that I was producing more pages per month than anybody else.
Wow.
It was easy for me. I had the Conan books too, which is that magazine, so there's 1 million pages right there.
Making everybody look bad.
Right. No, I'm not sure of that. But at least when I showed up, at 10 o'clock instead of 9, I didn't get in trouble. They said, you just keep doing what you're doing. That's fine.
there you go.
Which was very nice.
Now,
and
do
sweet
you
of
have a
them.
favorite storyline from when you were writing New Mutants or Power Pack
Oh, gosh.
or something that stands out, X Factor?
My favorite storyline from New Mutants, there are 2 of them. I like the poor dead Doug storyline.
With the
and
birdie?
then the story where Warlock doesn't understand, he's an alien, he doesn't understand death, and in his culture, you could give energy to someone else.
Yeah. I'm tearing up just thinking about
I
this. I
know.
remember this story.
I know, it's sad. So he takes Doug's corpse out of its coffin and carries it around, trying to convince him that coming back to life is a good idea. Now, honestly, Chris had done a story where, or maybe it was me, I can't remember who did it now, where obvious to us that Doug had the transmode virus and that really you probably could bring him back to life.
Right. Those seeds have been planted.
But nobody ever did it. It was so weird. They just left him. Bob Harris hated him.
Okay.
This was told to me. Bob Harris did not tell me this story. I was told this story that after I had left the book, Bob actually had Kitty or somebody go down and look in Doug's coffin to make sure he was actually really dead.
Oh,
or
my
at least
goodness.
I don't know that this isn't true, but that cracked me up because I thought that sounded about right. Isn't that funny?
It is, but it reminds me so much of like being a young kid, and I remember I learned about Death from Mr. Rogers, right?
Right.
He was like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
here's the goldfish, and like, this is something. But you would imagine like a kid, if your goldfish died, you would carry it like it's going to wake up eventually. It's going to wake up,
Right.
And like that's the same thing with the Warlock. He's going to wake up. He's fine.
Right.
You're okay.
If I show him enough stuff.
Right, he's going to be okay. And so,
Yeah.
like, again, one of the things that we talk about all the time is the fact that, like, comic books, when we were growing up, were written for all ages.
They were.
Whether for 6 or 60, you kind of wrote that everybody can enjoy it. And there was a little piece for everybody. And
Yeah, people
and that's
read them
what
at their own level.
That's what I wonder. I
Is what
love
you're
about
talking
your
about.
work is there are notes for everybody. You'll read that Warlock exchange as a 6-year-old, different than you will read it when you're 46 and you've gone through some stuff.
Yeah.
So just kudos to that.
Well, thank you.
That's something that means a lot to me as a comic book reader over the years. And I wish that showed up a little bit more, because nowadays sometimes they write comic books just for us.
Right.
And we're like, what about my kids?
I
Like,
know.
where are the spinner racks for them? Everybody that I talk to says, I got my first comic off of spinner racks. I got mine.
I know.
Put them in places where they can pick them up. That's just, I'm just going down my rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that it was to the detriment of comics when they became so very exclusively comic shop driven. I know Power Pack lost sales at that point, because all the kids were buying stuff off spinner racks.
I'm still waiting for the Power Pack movie. I know that was one of the 10 things in the initial Marvel pitch. The Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I know it was, and every 5 years I hear from somebody that a new screenplay has been written, and then nothing happens.
Oh.
And Disney has it now.
Right.
And I'm not sure that's going to be good for Power Pack, because Disney has a lot of kid movie possibilities out there.
Oh, that's true. And I don't know if they, like, getting the depth that you guys had in Power Pack is something they'd be interested in doing.
Yeah, we'll see. I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah, Hope springs eternal.
Yeah, it does.
Well, one last book that I want to talk about with you is one of my favorites, and it was from, I think a little bit later on. It was Galactus the Devourer that I think you did with John Buscema with Bill Sienkiewicz inks.
Right.
And it's just like, so you got not only John, but then you got Bill Sienkiewicz also working on that book. And it's an amazing book, and I try to tell people about it because it was just like, this is the book where it's like Galactus is some sort of like addict or something. Like, he goes off the reservation.
Yeah, he went off the reservation.
He's no longer like Trial of Galactus, where it's like everything he does is well-intentioned. No, he just wants to eat planets for the heck of it. Right. And like Silver Surfer, like a mad dog, he has to put him down. Right. And I just wanted to pick your brain about where that idea came from, and like, working with John and Bill.
First of all, I never know where ideas came from. I'm sure it came from something. Oh, I know where that came from. Partly was that in John Byrne's Galactus story,
right?
The Trial of Galactus.
Yes.
Everybody heard what the explanation was, but it blew their little minds, and they couldn't remember afterwards what his purpose was.
Right.
And I said, screw that. Sorry, John. I love John, but that annoyed me.
And you have the power to do something.
I did.
Retconning.
I did. And I said, I'm going to do a story where we find out what was going on. And what you saw in that story was just the first half of it. There were supposedly 6 more issues.
Okay.
In which we find out that and I think it's been done since, that Galactus actually created the Silver Surfer as his successor. That he knew this would happen, that
Right.
eventually he would not be able to contain the energy that he had absorbed. It would drive him mad, that he would have to be destroyed, and that the person who destroyed him would then take his place.
Oh.
So that was,
History of the Marvel Universe. I think Mark Waid might have picked up that.
I think he did. I had said that. I don't know that Mark would have used my idea because
I mean, it makes sense because, like, that's like, you know, the father-son thing. Just like, you have to go back to those classic things.
Yeah, you do.
Fathers, sons,
Exactly.
mothers, daughters. Those are things people can relate to. They understand them, and they make for good stories.
Right.
Because they're timeless. So, yeah, no, I think that would have been interesting to
it would have been
that.
fun to do.
Yeah.
What happened about is that at first it was going to be part of the regular Silver Surfer
Right.
series, and then they decided Silver Surfer wouldn't sell. That what would sell was miniseries or series,
Right.
you know, a long series, a 12-issue one. And then they decided that this was a time when Marvel had been sold, and you know it was like strange financing going on that was influencing editorial decisions, but was completely out of our hands. So that then I was told that no, we would have to be split into 6 issues and 6 issues, and then it was like, no, you're going to have to do the last 6 issues in 3 issues because we don't think they were trying to do a lot of number ones because number ones at least they would count on to sell. So at that point I said, you know what? This is too big and important a story, right, woman, to be, you know, put into 3 issues. So I said, nah, I'll go over and do something else. I don't remember what it was. It was a good idea, and I'm glad Mark did it. I'm glad somebody of Mark's caliber did it eventually.
And I was going to say, I know you've worked on some of the Legends books where folks are going back and revisiting storylines.
I know.
Maybe you'll get a chance to get this miniseries out there.
I doubt it because I think it's already been done. So.
But not by you.
Not by me. My own special spin. I had only heard that it had been done. I had never actually read Mark's story. Did he make the Silver Surfer, the new Galactus?
It was Franklin Richards.
Was
the one who's taking over.
Yeah, Franklin became like, he was the Galactus, and Galactus was his herald, or is that it? Or
Galactus dies, and Franklin
all right,
takes over.
It's a little different than I would have done.
It's
all right, I can still do it then. Right, Marvel?
Absolutely.
Ask me. Anyway.
Get on it, Marvel. But yeah, thank you so much. You've been more than generous with your time. We've loved all these stories. It's just a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for all the great work over the years.
I've often heard you're a class act, and meeting you,
what a sweet
it really
thing to
is.
say.
It really is.
That's really sweet of you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thanks for stopping by the Last Comic Show.
Well, that was a good interview. Always liked some Louise Simonson. I mean, you know, anyone who had a hand in Inferno and that great crossover where Magic starred is got to be pretty good.
That's just a drop in the bucket. She's done so many things. Louise Simon was so great, so gracious to give us her time. That was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. And we've got some other wonderful folks right after these commercial breaks. We've got the wonderful interview with Ted Sikora from Hero Tomorrow Comics. So you'll learn all about that awesome indie publisher, as well as a wonderful interview with Riley Brown, the artist that was behind one of the books that we covered on the last Comic Shop this time last year, which was Batman Fortnite 0 Points.
Guest starring Snake Eyes.
It was supposed to be a day at the beach. But for 4 friends, one wrong road will put them on a direct course to being the main course. Her name is Grandma Hazel, a chainsaw-wielding psychopathic cannibal, a beast of the backwoods with a body count higher than a bowl of blood-spattered Scotch mints. from the creators of Hocus Pocus, Grandma Chainsaw, Evil as a Perm.
All right, we're here at Baltimore Comic-Con, and we're talking with Ted Sikora, who is the wonderful author of so many wonderful books over there at Hero Tomorrow Comics. And I know him from Pama, the Undiscovered Animal. I have the first 2 trades that you signed for me back at a show in Pittsburgh, as well as a fantastic print with your, 10-cent beer night.
Absolutely. Cleveland-based story, you got to do a 10-cent beer night.
It's great because he's out there on the diamond, and all the drunked up crowd are running out onto the field to try to attack him. It's wonderful, but that's kind of where I wanted to start, because one of the things that brought me to your series, and I've talked about it on a blog that I wrote all about your fantastic book there, is how Bronze Age it seems to me. And I'm a guy that loves Bronze Age books, but you're the type of person that does it right. In the Apama series, every single issue is like, here's another villain. And that's
Right,
how they
right.
used to do it. That's how you build a rogues gallery,
Yeah,
right? You want to
yeah.
talk a little bit about that? Was that through your mind?
100%. We weren't really even intending to make a comic book series. What happened is we made a feature film called Hero Tomorrow, which is a dark comedy about a guy who has an idea for a superhero, but he can't get it published. His girlfriend makes him a costume of his own character for Halloween, and he starts running around in it trying to fight crime, but with no superpowers. So the movie debuted at Comic-Con International in San Diego, 2006, and played film festivals all over the world. And one of the ideas, and it actually sprung from Tony Isabella, creator of Black Lightning.
Right.
He said, your character in the movie goes over and over about this Apama idea that he's trying to sell. And he goes, there's really nothing like that in comics. You ought to think about doing it as a comic book. Now, to rewind just a spell, Apama, in the movie, he's like, so many great superheroes are creature themed.
Right.
Bats, Wolverine, Spider-Mans, spiders, whatever. But all the good ones are already taken. So he decides, what if there's an animal that's so powerful and stealth it's just never been discovered yet by mankind? The humor of the movie is him trying to sell this Apama idea to publishers based on an animal that doesn't exist, and it just, they're not feeling it. So, and Milo Miller, who's the co-writer of the movie and Apama with me, we would have never started a comic book with such a weird idea. But because Tony Isabella, and others too, said you guys should think about doing a comic, we thought, what if we just did the book that was in our main character's head as if it got published?
Oh, yeah.
And we did issue 1, but, it has nothing to do with the movie other than it's the Apama costume and name. But this is about a Hungarian ice cream truck driver on the west side of Cleveland who unlocks the spirit force of the most savage beast mankind has never discovered, the Apama.
And he ends up wrecking a movie shot of the flaming carrot movie?
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, when we made the movie, there's a recurring comic shop store in the film, and we asked Marvel and DC straight up, could we use your books in this, just have them in the background, and they all said no.
Okay.
And so we said, well, how are we going to do a comic shop with no comics? So we went to conventions, and we met people like Mark Wheatley, Bob Burden, Tony Isabella hooked us up with, Kurt Busiek of Astro City. All these indie people sent us their books to stock our comic shop. So Bob Burden, creator of Flaming Carrot, was one of them. And he's a movie guy because he did Mystery Men.
Right.
I said, what if just for this first issue, Apama just bumbles onto a film set and screws it up? And we know all these comic creators now, and we love Flaming Carrot. And that was the one that was introduced to us that I became such a huge fan of Flaming Carrot to the point after Hero Tomorrow, we were developing a Flaming Carrot film with Bob. Like, we were working on a script.
Wow.
That never happened, obviously.
That's sad.
But
that would have been great.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I mean, it was just such a weird,
Right now is the time. Like, Mystery Men was so ahead of its time a little bit because people would have eaten this up if it would have happened.
Well, and on the DVD of Mystery Men, in the extras, Flaming Carrot was not chosen for the team because he was deemed too strange to film. And I was just like, oh, give me that. I'll show you what's too strange to film. We have a mushroom trip squid scene in our Hero Tomorrow movie. We can do a Flaming Carrot. Anyway, I digress.
So you came up with all these wonderful villains for Apama to fight.
Yeah, that was the question, right. So we have a classic origin story. That's Apama 1. And then when we're like, wow, we really love making comics. You know, it's like a lot less headache, a lot more liberating as a writer.
Right.
So let's make issue 2. And we made the first villain inspired by his nemesis friend in the movie. And the Lawnmower Man is kind of his nickname. Landscaper who kind of stumbles on this corporate job and crashes into the scientific experiment where these alien insects were being experimented on. And they bond with him. And then when we realized we wanted to do this, we're like, all right, well, we were big fans of Silver and Bronze Age, mostly Bronze, but they introduced Doctor Doom in issue 5 of the Fantastic Four. So issue 5 of Apama, we got to do something extra special. And that's where we introduced Regina. And it was very specifically to be his nemesis. She is this hippie, trippy, psychedelic cult leader who has been waiting 50 years for Apama, and he has no freaking idea why. I mean, our guy drives an ice cream truck. He is so outmatched by her in every way. Issue 6, we introduced the Ruster. Yeah, then we got into issues 10 and 11, where we introduced Tap Dance Killer, and that's based on an old musical I wrote years ago. I had the idea to bring the characters of the musical to life in Apama. This is such a long, windy road. I
will say that issue 5 is one of those great issues, especially if you get these in trades, because it's like, I think that's the capstone. That's the last issue in the first trade, right? Because it goes 1 through 5 and then 6 through 10. And that's a great way to finish off that first trade, because to your point, the psychedelic high priestess of Helltown, as it says on the opening cover. Like, that's his baptism of fire. Like, he's not going to survive that. Like, there's that great scene where he's talking with the bear. And it's a really wonderful issue. So, but I do want to talk a little bit about the art. I want to know how you hooked up with Benito, because that's another great part of this series, as I talk about all the time, with it being like such a throwback to those Bronze Age books. Benito's artwork immediately reminded me of John Buscema and that classic Bronze Age style. How did you meet Benito?
A great question. When we decided we were going to do this issue, which really, again, was just a digital comic that was going to be on our movie's website to try to draw people to buy the movie, which didn't work.
It turned out well for you.
Well, it didn't sell movies for us. That's what I was saying. We put an ad, I think it was Deviant Art, I believe it was, and we were like this movie company that is doing a comic book spin-off. We got 100 people from all over the world, and amazing artists, but Benito Gallego, when we saw his stuff, we dropped dead in our tracks, because it did have that classic feel. Because Milo and I just don't think you ever really liked stuff quite as much in certain ways as what you loved when you were between 11 and 14, like that. The music, I was into Van Halen. I still love Van Halen. It's something about that era. I just wanted to see that, and when I saw that, wow, we can make a book that looks just like the ones we grew up loving, and do it in a modern tale, though. We weren't trying to make a spoof, which I think is what a lot of things that go back to the Bronze Age do. We were like, what if comics just evolved completely differently and they still look that way? Man, he is such a solid storyteller. He lives in Spain, and we'll go around and shoot photos of Cleveland. We kind of scout scenes for him, and we give him scouting photos. So, going back to what we do is making a film, we scout. And he's got the look of Cleveland in such a rich way. And also this European sensibility, though, I can't say enough about him. I adore the guy. Yeah,
and if you do look at it, his layouts are tremendous. There's an opening scene, I think it's in issue 1, where they're explaining what Apama is, and this weird beast that kind of looks like a cross between, I don't know, like a tiger and a werewolf and a hyena and all these other things. It's attacking like every single other. It's like elephants and lions and eating bears' face. But it's a wonderful scene, because it just kind of flows from one picture to the next over this almost one panel spread.
It was a heavy lift there. Yeah, that was Well, and what happens is there's a tournament of animals. So Ilya, our ice cream truck driver, finds this cave. Well, he gets knocked out in front of it, and he has this dream about the day the animals all gathered to determine who would be the king of the beasts. There was this tournament, of course, and the Apama wins. And as its victory, it says, I don't. You can call the lion the king or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I just want my solitude, and that's why Apama is still to this day the undiscovered animal. Hence the title.
Oh, there you go. Well, let's really quickly pivot to some of the other books. I know that we were just talking about, you have a hot book out there called Bloom. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So yeah, issue 5, we introduced Apama's nemesis, Regina, and she's this big mystery element. We go back to her origin story in Bloom. It's a self-contained 4-issue series. It takes place in 1969, simultaneous to Woodstock, not at Woodstock, but they're tapping into the collective consciousness of the event. The quick premise is there is an aspiring comic book creator who goes to a street fair and sees this trippy band, and they have this backup singer who's doing these wild dance improvisations during the guitar solos. And after the show, he approaches Regina and he says, "Hey, I'm doing a comic. I'd love you to pose as my villain. What do you think of that?" She thinks it's ridiculous, but she's this hippie who's down for anything, and they go into the woods for a photo shoot. He starts painting glyphs all over her body in preparation for the shoot, and she asks, all right, so this is a villain. Are these like satanic or pagan? What is this? He said, no, it's just something I saw when I was tripping. I just drew it into my sketchbook. Thought it would look cool on my villain. Now, Ramsey is not lying, but once it's on Regina, she breaks on through to the other side during this shoot. They get lost in the woods. She wants no part of ever going back or letting him leave, and you start to understand Apama's nemesis on a whole other level.
Well, very cool. So yeah, if you've picked up Apama like I have and you want a little more backstory on his nemesis, somebody that's extremely important to that entire series, as I mentioned on the last comic shop, we're all about getting you the next book. Make sure that you're picking up Bloom. It's a 4-issue. Is it going to be out in a trade, do you feel, at some point?
At some point it will, but not anytime soon.
Okay.
I just kind of make things a bit easier on myself. There's enough headaches.
Is Tap Dance Killer still doing well for you?
Well, it is. In fact, at this show especially, lately Bloom and Tap Dance Killer go neck and neck, and I think they trade off on which one sells more. Tap Dance Killer's winning here in Baltimore.
Okay.
And Tap Dance Killer introduced a heavyweight boxer who becomes a super-powered murderous clown named Punchline, and he's spun into his own series as well. So we got issue 1 of Punchline going, and issue 2 is going to be when Punchline and Apama square off. So that's I'm really looking forward to this blast-out fight.
Right, and that's, again, another wonderful thing about Hero Tomorrow Comics is, like, everything seems very organic. Again, like those old days of Marvel, like where you had one book, you're Fantastic Four, it was Apama, and like everything's kind of spinning off of that very organically, and it's wonderful. So you've got a rich universe to pick from in terms of books from Hero Tomorrow Comics. So make sure that you're getting out to your local comic shop and picking up some of these great books. If you see Ted at any cons, make sure you come up and say hello. He's a great guy, and thank you so much for taking some time here at the Last Comic Shop to talk with us.
Of course, and may I give a little pitch to our website if anybody
Absolutely.
wants to? Yeah, so you go to herotomorrow.com. On all the Instagrams and Twitters and Facebooks, it's just at Hero Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or myself, Ted Sikora, TEDSIKORA.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we're here at Baltimore Comic Con with Riley Brown.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Yeah, who's been wonderful enough to take some time to talk with all of you out there in Last Comic Shop podcast land. So, Riley, first and foremost, how's your show going?
It's great, man. Baltimore Comic Con is one of my favorite conventions. It's fantastic. It's like so many shows are all about, the publishers making their next big announcement or the movie stars or whatever. But this one is really just about the artists and the creators. It's about like hanging out with Alan Davis and Walt Simonson and hearing stories about working for Marvel in the 80s or whatever. So I love this show. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you get to be a little bit of a fanboy as well as a talent.
Absolutely.
No, I dig that totally. It's really nice to come to a show like Baltimore, which is truly still centered around comics, and again, the things we kind of talk about in the Last Comic Shop is it's the gateway to all that other stuff, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of that and gateways, the first question I always ask folks is how you got involved with comics in terms of being just a fan. So do you remember what the first comic book you got was?
The first comics I got were the Masters of the Universe comics that came with the action figures back in the 80s.
Nice! Those are my favorites too.
Alfredo Alcala and Mark Texiera.
Yep.
And that stuff, I love that. Like,
you know, Larry Houston drew for that too?
Yep, Larry Houston. And I actually have a podcast also, and Larry was a guest on ours. He's great.
That is one of the books I keep by my bed just in case there's a burglar in my house, is the Masters Universe Mini Comics Omnibus, because it's so thick. It's like a cajillion pages. You could really do some damage.
Yeah.
But there's so many wonderful people. Bruce Timm worked on that series, and you had the Masters Universe Mini Comics.
I had that, and then I didn't really, so I read that when I was like, 6 or 7 years old.
Okay.
And then I didn't really get into comics, like middle school, because I always wanted a Spider-Man comic. And this one time we went to the drugstore, and I'd finally convinced my dad to buy me a Spider-Man comic. So yeah, sure, go pick one out. And I went over there. This is in the mid '80s, and I look around, and like I see the comics say Spider-Man. But there's this guy in like a black suit. I was so confused. I thought it was like a knockoff of Spider-Man.
Right.
And so I didn't read any Spider-Man comics because the black costume confused me so much. And I was like, this isn't the guy. I don't understand.
See, I had the opposite experience, because I had an older brother. He was 10 years my senior, and he had like that Secret Wars issue, and it was on his desk. Yeah. So I saw Spider-Man like standing there in the black costume, and then I started seeing him on this newsstands, because I was about the same age as you, and I was just like, oh no, that's Spider-Man. And that ended up being my Spider-Man was actually black suit Spider-Man.
I know a lot of people were like, oh, now he's cooler than ever. You got to read the one with the black suit. But to me, I was just so lost. So then it wasn't until 6th grade, I was at a friend's birthday, and as a party favor, they were giving everyone Marvel Comics.
Okay.
And I got this one issue that it was like a Marvel team-up thing from, like early 80s or something. But it had Doctor Doom and Spider-Man and Vision and Scarlet Witch. And I wanted to be an artist. Like, I loved drawing and stuff at that point. But I didn't know what kind of art I wanted to do.
Okay.
Maybe newspaper strips, but I thought it'd be hard to come up with a joke every single day.
Right.
And animation, I knew they had like tons of artists working on any single cartoon, and I figured with my luck, my job would probably be animating doors opening and closing, which I just thought would be so boring. But then...
You're the window guy.
Yeah, exactly. But then I got this comic, and I look, and there's just one guy who drew all the cool stuff, all the heroes, and the doors opening and closing, and like, the robots, the mutants, whatever was in there. And I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit later. So like now you've got that bug, and you're just like, I want to be a comic book artist. How did you translate your love of comic books as a fan into a comic books as a career?
I went to college for illustration at VCU in Richmond, Virginia. And while I was there, me and friends just started, doing our own self-published anthologies and stuff like that.
Okay.
Odd God Press, but you would probably still find them in some quarter bin somewhere, and like,
some ash cans.
Yeah, in like Northern Virginia somewhere.
That's very cool.
My buddy Pat Godfrey actually bought the comic store that we shopped at in Richmond, which is now Velocity Comics.
Okay.
So he probably has some copies if you want to get like the
very
first
cool. I might have to stop down to Velocity Comics and see.
Yeah.
Do you have any original Riley Brown?
Yeah. But we did that. I had this character I drew called Orath, the Intergalactic Caveman.
Very cool.
But after I graduated, I just started, going to comic conventions and showing my portfolio off. And it took about a year. I got in a portfolio review line for Marvel, met John Barber, who was an editor over there.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, oh, I like your stuff. Do you have a card? I'll stay in touch. And then a week later, I got a phone call, and he's, it's John, and he's looking for someone to draw the 2005 holiday special.
Very cool.
Yeah. That was pretty much it.
Nice. That is awesome. And then just from there, kind of snowballed, or?
Well, more or less. What no one really talks about is that when you break into comics, you have to keep breaking into comics. So like, I got that first job, and I was like, I'm in, and then like, I don't hear anything for like maybe 3 or 4 months from
right.
I was like, oh no.
You got any more work for me?
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, yeah, Riley, we like your stuff. we're all booked up right now, but try back later. I was like, oh no. So,
well, one book that we want to talk about on this interview is Batman Fortnite Zero Point.
Yes.
Because we covered it on the last Comic Shop. As some of you might know, last December we covered this book as part of our Panel Pal series, our series of episodes trying to get young folks into comics. We know that Fortnite, huge video game among the young folks. Batman is also a very popular character. And you've heard just from both me and Riley that one of the first comic books we got into was licensed comic books, right? With the Masters of the Universe. Those licensed comic books can be a gateway to getting into comics. So I want to talk about this. So you work with Christos Gage.
Yes.
He was the writer. When it comes to this, I know that I originally picked this up and I was like, all right, I've got to read it because it's Panel Pals or whatever. But I really enjoyed that series. For a book that was about a video game starring Batman, there was some deep stuff going on in that book, especially issue 2 with Catwoman and Batman and them having to make the choice who was going to go back to the real world, and Batman decided to stay behind. It was really touching. Can you talk a little about this project?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things, when they first presented it to me, I was kind of like, I know Fortnite is huge, there's going to be a lot of fans for it, but these licensed books, usually there's just a headache of getting approval for this and that, and it kind of makes the stories these sort of nothing fluff pieces. But they were like, no, like Donald Mustard, who created Fortnite, is like hands-on involved with this. Christos Gage has a killer script. They sent me like the breakdown of the story and everything, and I was like, this is actually pretty good. And it's not just some random piece of Fortnite merchandise. It's like, this is a really good contribution to the Batman mythos.
Oh yeah.
Because the Batman Catwoman story is like kind of that's like the centerpiece of the whole storyline. That's what it all revolves around. And it happened pretty much right after their marriage didn't happen or fell apart or whatever. And so this is them getting back together again, but they don't have a memory of any of it. So,
yes.
So there are some heartbreaking scenes knowing like, oh, this is them back together, but they don't know who each other are, meet each other over and over again, and then die in each other's arms over and over again.
Yes, it is. It's so surreal and almost existential in some ways. I can't gush enough about it. Like, if you haven't read it, it's a really great book, and it's really great art in there. I know that towards the end of issue 6, you get that awesome spread of like the Batman-Catwoman relationship over the years. Tell us about drawing that and like the inspiration for all of that.
I really liked that page. That was kind of like the gut punch to the whole series. So without any spoilers, there's one page where inevitably, I think, based on the concept, Batman gets his memories back. And so it's Batman and Catwoman getting their memories back and remembering their whole history together. So I want to do this montage of their whole history. So I start with like a scene from the first time they met when he like accidentally, quote unquote, lets her escape from, the ship he and Robin have caught her on. And then I show, her in like with the bad guys from the 60s TV show to kind of show her like crime career, and then show her in Batman fight and, have the proposal and the whole thing. It was fun to explore that whole history and like find what are the key moments in their history.
Right. It always amazes me when artists like yourself do those kind of collages with all the. I always like to ask, like, because again, you see things like that with like George Perez, where he's like got so many characters on a page. You know what I mean? But it's similar to you. I mean, like, there's a lot going on, and so like when you sat down to say that's what I'm going to do, like, where did you start? Did you do it kind of chronologically? You just started in the one corner and make your way around, or
kind of, yeah. I mean, it goes chronologically. It kind of snakes its way across the page. I think in kind of like an S type thing, but visually there's a lot happening on that page.
Right.
It has to be like you want to have a lot of images that kind of bleed into each other, but also make it clear. You don't want it to just look like a clutter.
Right.
You want it to have a flow to it. And so I wanted to make sure it was chronological. Like the script just says, and then they get their memories back, show this somehow.
Right.
And so Christos mentioned he really wanted to have Batman reading the Dear John letter, because that was like their narration of the wedding issue, but you don't actually see it happen. So he's like, okay, this is where we actually see him reading the letter.
Right.
And then, but I really wanted to make sure I got a scene from their first meeting in there, because that's one of my favorite Batman scenes. It's so ridiculous, and it's like, if you've never read it, it's in, I think, Batman #1, way back in the 40s.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, it's such a cute little scene. But I wanted to make sure I got something in there, and then I wanted to show her progression over the years. So I wanted to show how her costume changed, or how both their characters' costumes changed. You know, Batman history and continuity is so weird that it's so that I was like, well, I want to bring in other, not just comics. This is like their whole thing. They've always been an item. And then doing research, okay, what are pivotal scenes? And there's this one scene in the 80s where Catwoman's trying to kill him, and that's the main picture on the page.
Yeah.
In that 80s purple dress she's wearing. And stuff.
Right. Well, it is an incredible image, and another incredible image that you get in this particular book is Batman versus Snake Eyes.
Yeah.
You seem to be a kid of the 80s as well, so how was that, smashing those toys together?
That's one of those moments, as a comic artist, where you read the script and think it's going to be pretty cool, and then when you start drawing it, you're like, oh my god, I'm actually drawing this.
Were you worried about messing up? You're like, these are characters that are they're so iconic. I got to do this right.
I mean, I took my son's action figures, his Batman and his Snake Eyes action figure, was posing them and stuff, make sure I got all the details right, and using that as reference on my table. And it felt like I was just a kid again playing with my toys.
It is a awesome. Great issue.
Well, the way that came about is Donald Mustard was saying, he's like, okay, issue number 3, we're going to have a big fight. We want to have a guest appearance. We don't know who it's going to be yet. So when you're planning the story, somehow don't put anything issue number 3, because we just want to find somebody who isn't Fortnite, isn't a DC, and who's awesome, who Batman has never fought before.
Right.
And so that was what he was able to get Snake Eyes, and it was just awesome.
Yeah, that was a perfect pick.
Yeah.
That was a perfect pick for Batman's skill set, and I loved how everybody in the Fortnite universe just stood still watching these two. It was great.
Yeah, let's two ultimate ninjas.
Let's talk about some work that's coming up from you just really quickly in the next year in 2023. Is there anything you can talk about that will be coming out in the stores that people should check out?
Well, let's see. We got Outrage, which is a creator-owned series I do with Fabian Nicieza, the co-creator of Deadpool, and I collaborate on a lot of things at Marvel. Been doing Outrage on Webtoons. Check out new episodes for free on Webtoon every week. But also we've got the first volume of the printed edition is coming out. I think it's coming out, I believe, November of 2022. So And then I'm working on another project I don't think has been announced yet.
Okay.
So, I mean, it hasn't exactly been top secret, but I don't want to
That's
announce
all
something
right.
before
That is
official.
okay. No problem at all. Well, you know what, Riley? Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with everybody on The Last Comic Shop. It was really great to get to know you as an artist, to kind of gush about some comic books I know Last Comic Shop listeners have gotten opportunity to enjoy on our podcast, and it was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. This was fun.
Real quickly, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at Riley_Brown, and Twitter, it's the same thing. And I've got my own podcast, Hypothetical Island, and we put out a new episode every week. Do it with my former art studio roommate, George O'Connor, who's another comic artist. It's a lot of fun. We talk to a lot of comics creators, and just very goofy podcast, but
it's a good podcast. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All I want to say about Batman Fortnite Zero Point is I wish that they would do the crossover in the toys as well, because the Fortnite toys are some of the nicest toys that are actually made for kids these days. It'd be nice if the Batman had that sort of, similar build quality as opposed to the dreck that whoever makes Batman toys is putting out. Hasbro, who makes Batman toys?
Oh, man. So, okay, Batman currently is being put out simultaneously by Spin Master at the 4-inch line, and then they have a 5.5-inch line of superpowers done by McFarlane Toys. And there's also a 7-inch line of DC superheroes from McFarlane Toys that has tons of Bat characters. And that's not discounting any of the other Batman toys that come out at any given time. So there's a lot.
But no, I think J.A. has a point. I think that's the closest costume that we could get to that Zack Snyder duster Batman, right? Because like it's a very similar look in that Batman's Fortnite 0 Point. He doesn't have the actual coat, but it's kind of like got the weird pouches places. And
although I will stick up, the Spin Master line is a fun line for kids. The DC Heroes, that is a good one, and you could take that and put that in with your Fortnite guys. But those Fortnite 4-inch toys, they are spectacular. You get like close to 30 points of articulation on each one.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, who doesn't want to pose Batman punching a guy with a banana for a hit?
I think Chad does that anyways. With some
I was going to say, I do, and I have.
Who makes the line of DC characters that come with the comic and the really, really tiny figure? It's like thimble sized.
Page punchers or panel punchers or whatever. Those are McFarlane again.
Yeah, those stink. Those are real. It's cool that they bring a comic book, but I mean, compared to like 10 years ago when they were coming out with like that 2-pack at Hasbro with like 2 Marvel figures and a comic book, and they were again 3 3/4 size. Like, this is bullshit that they give you just a little tiny. It's like a juice glass version of a figure. It's like a sip.
I can only tell you that I haven't bought any of them. They're not action figures. They're little tiny statues.
Well, one thing that we hope that you buy every single week is our pleas to come back to the Last Comic Shop again. We have several more of these interview shows with some wonderful folks coming up, whether it was Jim Starland, Jerry Ordway, Frank Cho, Mark Schultz, a variety of folks coming up on future shows. And so that we hope you come back, and you can do that by rate, reviewing, and subscribing out at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. It's a terrific place where you can find all the links to everything, including some awesome videos that we cut at Baltimore Comic-Con. If you haven't checked those out, some of the things that Chad got signed. Jerry Ordway's, I think, was my favorite. I mean, he drew this Superman face on your completely white blank 0 hour cover, which I won't lie, I was a little jealous of.
Yeah, I don't buy a lot of, like, they make the blank cover comics. I'm like, who wants that? But they published this one that had the blank cover. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take that for the same reason. And if you want to find things like the polls we talked about earlier, Golden Age covers of Tuck In at Night, just general comic book conversation or what we're picking up each week at the comic shops, you can find us on the social medias at Last Comic Shop. That includes Twitter. That includes Instagram. And that includes YouTube. Oh, and Facebook that we update occasionally.
No, it's kind of cool over at YouTube now because they've given us the handle at Last Comic Shop. Like, oh, it's almost like a Twitter feed on YouTube where you can just leave like posts and, you know, thoughts and everything. So who knows what might happen in future, but you might find us interacting a little bit more on our YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribing to that.
Okay, and once you've done all of the socials, come back to our website where we've got a link to our merch store if you want to buy a present for your significant other, including the special Christmas variety version of our Last Comic Shop logo with the Santa Claus and the reindeer. Maybe next year we'll do Chevy Chase in the corner. I don't know.
I can only hope. Could we put a little RV next to the shop and somebody trying to, like, empty a chemical toilet into a...
Oh, jeez. Anyway, if you're looking for recommendations this week, our recommendations are go out there and find books from Louise Simonson. Go out there and find books from Ted Sikora, and go out and find some awesome work from Riley Brown as well. These are some hardworking creators that were out there at Baltimore Comic-Con giving us the time of day, and they're out there making wonderful comics for you available at your local comic shop. So check them out.
All right. And until next week, I was the host with the most, Andy Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith and J.A. Scott, and we hope that you come back. Until then, stay safe, stay festive, and remember that if there's an elf on your shelf, you gotta move them. Like, evidently, it's like a serious thing. Like, it's why I don't do Elf on the Shelf at my house, because, like, I don't have that kind of commitment.
There's only so much elf and mischief I can come up with. I don't think I can handle the whole holiday season.
And J.A., no Elf on the Shelf for you?
No Elf on the Shelf, no.
It would be terrible in the Philippines because you have to start back in September.
Yes, the elf would be here for a fourth of the year. And that's a little bit too much help.
The Last Comic Shop was a 2022 Black Angus production.